My name is Gregory Old. I am with the playlist, and thank you so much for coming to the screening today of this absolutely fantastic movie. I am so excited to be moderating this Q&A with two of the icons who are part of this film, who are on screen. Please welcome, she's an Oscar winner. You've seen her in everything, some of your favorite films, the one and only Laura Dern. And he is the writer, director, producer, and also stars in this film. He has made iconic films such as Stars Born and Maestro. Please welcome Mr. Bradley Cooper. So, obviously, the first question comes to you, Bradley. You made A Star Is Born. You made Maestro, two very different films. When this came your way from your friend Will Arnett, what sparked? What made you think this is the next film I want to make?
Yeah, it didn't originally enter my mind that way. I was in the middle of shooting a movie, and then I've been friends with Will for a long time, and I asked him what he was working on, and then he was talking about this movie about a stand-up comedian based on a real guy, John Bishop, in the UK, who happened to walk into a bar. That really happened one night, didn't want to pay the cover, put his name down for an open mic so he didn't have to pay the $15 or whatever it was. And I thought, that's crazy, that really happened? And the other thing that really happened was his estranged wife walked in while he kept going up, and then one night when he was doing a set about her with her friends. So that actually happened. I thought, well, that's just incredible, that if you actually wrote that, you would think it's too much. And then just the fact that Will was working on something where he was playing his stand-up, and I just couldn't get this image of him. You know, he's got such a great voice. And he always reminded me of Robert Mitchum. I always just thought he reminded me of like a young Robert Mitchum. And we lived together in Venice, California, and we were in our 20s, and I always idolized him, and I always and he's always been the funniest guy in the room. But I never saw him do something like I don't know, you come up with people, and sometimes, everybody's a different track, and I was always it miffed me that like he didn't have the chance to bite into something. And then I just was like, oh man, you got to do this, talking to Will. And then I just kept thinking about that image of him, which wound up being in the movie, this face, and I love stand-up comedy. And I just thought, and I was thinking like, oh, what if because it wasn't in New York or anything. And I couldn't get it out of my head. It was just that simple. And then finally I was like, do you think maybe I could like take a stab at rewriting it and maybe direct it? And let's do it together. And then that's how it just sort of happened.
So obviously you'd wanted to work with him for a long time, but
no, I never thought about working with him.
Really?
No. It was just we're friends. Yeah. This one I wanted to work with.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, but no, we were just friends. Yeah. I mean, and by the way, we did do the comebacks. Thank you. And and wait, we did another one too. With Rainn Wilson was the star of it, where he plays a drummer.
Oh, right.
With Jason Sudeikis,
Yeah.
Emma Stone's in it. What was it?
The Rocker.
The Rocker. Thank you. Yeah. We were Vesuvius, the band. Thank you.
But had you and Laura talked about working on any projects?
Always. Yeah. But we never. But yeah, we've been since we were friends, and I feel like we did do projects together. Because she's been a sounding board for me for everything I've ever done. But we talked about developing something together, but then eventually, I was just thinking about what if we make it much more about a movie about communication, and the stand-up is just a foil for him to be in process of something that can reveal himself to himself, and then he can express himself in his intimate relationships. I was like, that's a movie I think I want to explore. So who would be the counterpart? And I was like, and then Laura's so tall. Quite honestly, that was the first thing I thought, because Will's so tall. And I was like, and then like an athlete, and like, what if she's coming down the mountain, like she already went to the precipice. What's that story? And then I was thinking like a striker. And it was just, and I was like, Laura, and then we talked about it before I went and wrote it. And then we really, she's such a great writer, Laura, and viciously smart as well as talented. And so we made it together. We wrote that character together.
So what about Tess intrigued you? What made you, when he first brought up the idea of it, what made you want to jump on board?
I said yes before I read anything, to be honest, because he asked, and we'd had this longing for so long, and you hope to be true in your work, and you hope to find stories that allow a depth of truth that hopefully we can all find relatable. And then, there are few and far between guides that will require it of you and will help you go deeper and will help you find places and spaces within yourself you don't even know you have. And I knew Bradley would offer that as a filmmaker, both from having watched him work on his first two films, but also knowing him as an actor. And so that was the experience that made it, you know, a definitive yes before even falling in love with Tess and all she can be. And really, Tess was born, I think Tess was born of him seeing pieces of me I hadn't caught up with yet.
Like, so in that context, one of the interesting things about the film, and you may not be aware of this, is Bradley, you held the camera, you shot for scenes obviously you are not in, a ton of this. First of all, what made you want to do that? And then for Laura, what was that experience like for all three of you, sort of to be, when you're, it's one thing to have a camera operator that you know, he's on set, he's part of the film, but this is your friend you've known for years in these sort of shooting in these intimate scenes.
Well, first of all, Scott Sakamoto was also the camera operator who I was so lucky to come from LA because we shot this in New York. It was a lower budget movie and that was invaluable. And he's a legend. And Maddie operated a little bit too. Maddie Libatique was DP, was also a stand-up comedian. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, he crushed it. Yeah, he was amazing because he's so funny. And I was like, you're gonna be one of the comedians. He's like, nah. I was like, yeah, we're gonna shoot it tomorrow. And he was great. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Tesla. So it really was about renting a camera. Will was there. This whole process happened so fast. I wrote it in the summer, and then we were testing cameras and like what lens. And I was like, and I knew I wanted to be around in the cellar in McDougal Street. And so we just rented a camera, and then Will was in New York at the time, and we would just steal shots and I think, and then we went down. Originally, the Chinese Lunar New Year was a much larger part of the script, and there were chirons, 4 sections, and it was all takes place. It still takes place in one calendar year, but you may not notice that. But she does mention it when they're in Oyster Bay. But and so we went down and we shot the festival down there for like 3 nights, and I operated all that. So it was already sort of felt like the fabric of the way we were going to shoot it, and then it just. And we landed, Maddie and I landed on the whole movie shot on a 40mm lens and that 1:6:1 aspect ratio, and then it was like the whole thing actually needs to be handheld, and it just was it was kind of organic, and there's something about the way that we had done so much prep prior to the film, Will, Laura, and I, and also quite honestly, the other 2 movies I've been the lead actor, so I'm much more accustomed of being on the field directing. So in a way, maybe subconsciously, I wanted to still be on the field. That might, I'm just sort of saying it for the first time now, but I think maybe that was a part of it. But, I learned so much from David O. Russell, and I really locked into the way he directs in a huge way. And that just felt, I remember being on Silver Linings Playbook, it's like, oh, this is the way I want to work. And I definitely took that, a part of that from him, and he was always right there. And then I think that there's something about constantly having a dialogue with the actors while we're all creating, so it all feels like one unit, including all of the crew, is the way that I feel the best work can be done.
Laura, was that your experience as well?
Completely. I mean, the intimacy of your director and your friend and this supreme actor with his instincts and the story he already visualizes, but internally and externally, being literally right here with you is such a radically pure and amazing experience. Instead of even with a director on set and nearby, you're cutting, you're having a conversation, you're going back in, but this is all in real time. And there were so many moments where I would feel an instinct, he would see it, he'd start to say the thing, and I would go into it because we were playing the character together. It became this, singular organism, I think, between the 3 of us, and that was, unparalleled. I think the only negative I ever felt, because I have some codependency, was the fear that he was hurting himself because it was exhausting labor.
I was like sweating through 3 t-shirts a day. It's hard work.
It is hard work.
But I do remember one time we stopped the scene, and then you were like,
I was looking at your hair the whole time, because like Balls has all this unwieldy hair and I have a beard, and I'm like trying to pull it back, but it was like in the way of you seeing Will. Do you remember that? You're like, I did that to your hair the whole take.
I'm like on the take while he's shooting, and I'm trying to see Will. I'm like tucking his hair behind his ear to be able to see through it.
I also have to ask, the audience probably doesn't know this. I know this, or I know the secret of this scene already, but the 15-minute sequence where Will is going to have his big night, I don't know if it's at the Cellar or which comedy show, and you're on a date with Peyton Manning, which, by the way, how did that happen?
Again, Laura Dern's idea. Yeah, she was like, "What about Peyton Manning?" Because we were going to develop.
Just because I wanted to meet Peyton Manning.
we were trying to develop a TV show with Peyton Manning right when he retired with Laura's mom, based on my experience when my dad died. My mom lived with me for 3 years, and it was such a crazy time. And and she knew me. We talked about all that, and so that's how we got to know him. And then he said, "No, I don't really want to do that in my life right now." And then when you brought that up, it just clicked, and I was like 100%. So I still had his number, so I reached out to him, and I just said, "Listen, there's this thing, but like it's really a character, and there's going to be a meta to it because you used to play, but you're a volleyball player." And it was not easy, it took a little bit of back and forth, but then he came and did it, and he crushed it. He was incredible. Yeah.
Incredible.
I actually forgot it was Peyton Manning.
That's the hope. The hope is first you see it from the wide, and you're like, "Is that Peyton Manning?" And then you're like you're like at another table. You're like, "That's definitely Peyton Manning," And then you're over her and he's talking. You're like, "Oh, he's Peyton Manning playing Peyton Manning." And then all of a sudden he starts talking about. Then you're like, "Oh, he's playing a character." And then hopefully like 30 seconds in, you forget it's Peyton Manning. That was the goal.
Right, because you want Tess to have a connection. You want her to
have a worthy adversary. You want that possibly think that the movie could veer off.
Yeah. But that sequence, from what I know, you did not know what Will was going to say in his comedy act. Is that correct? And was that your choice or your guys' choice, or did I mishear that?
Yeah, I mean, we read the script a lot.
Yeah, I knew.
Oh, okay.
I knew the basics of it, but it was true that they were shooting before my coverage.
Yeah.
The versions of it, and you had me not come in.
Right.
So
I wanted you to
didn't see him
experience
do
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we shoot Tess, that's them. That's the first time they're. She wasn't like off camera for all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And that so much of that scene, there's not that much dialogue, but we are witnessing Tess sort of experience this and sort of go through it, like realizing this is happening to her and her life is now out upon stage. What was that thought process like for you as an actor?
It was such an amazing opportunity, and it exists because the filmmaker chooses to play it on a character and not cut away, so that you can feel the transitions of emotion, that you can feel someone in real time experiencing it. All I knew was, the truth of this moment-to-moment experience for Tess. Watching the movie now, I'm so moved that Bradley affords the character that experience, because what I think now, I haven't said this to you, we're having a conversation, but what I thought when I saw the movie was that this was the moment I began to become a grown-up. I think I was so wrapped in skill and shutting things down and letting the past go, to try to now be a perfect mom or perfect wife or whatever these other stories I had laid out for myself were. But something about seeing him be the man I first fell in love with, but also this entirely new individual, someone who is awake and alive in a new way. I think it's a moment that she recognizes that she has to do that for herself if she's really going to show up, as a full, woman in her life and in the marriage. And so it's this wild, unspoken thing that starts to happen that's symbiotic in the relationship, that was so beautiful. And to me, we only get that luxury because he doesn't cut away. He didn't use a little piece of something. And so it was very moving to get to be part of it and have the time to really explore what that felt like. And again, Bradley and I together. I mean, he's right here. And that was, an amazing, vulnerable, beautiful time.
Well, the relationship is so complex, and we were talking outside, and you were talking about how many of the journalists you've been talking to while doing press for this film have sort of been communicating you with their relationship problems and like how it speaks to them in so many ways, which I'm sure you were not expecting. Did you realize, either of you, that it would affect people so much this way? Is that the goal when you make a film like this? Is that it sort of speaks to people going through this?
I mean, the goal, at least for me, is the general goal is always the same, which is hopefully heal. Right? That's always the general goal through art. But this was just and always to have somebody relate, even though it's hopefully a cinematically enjoyable movie that you can relate to, no matter how archetypal the characters are. Yeah, of course.
And this is a little bit of a segue, but I have to ask this. You shot this movie in 33 days, and then you had 5 months to get it to the New York Film Festival.
Wow.
What was that challenge like for you? Did it make you nervous? Were you excited about it? Like, how did you sort of take it on?
Yeah, it was interesting because it was supposed to come out next year, and then but at least they gave us the heads up during shooting. It was at first they're like, "What do you mean one lens?" And then it was like, "Aren't you going to do coverage?" And it was not, it was, especially that scene that you're mentioning. I still remember that, like, because that was the whole thing was always supposed to be her almost in the same composition that he is when he first goes. There's something hopefully sort of thematic about the cellar that you're able to see something or be aware, and she's watching him be honest for the first time in many, many years, so that she's witnessing the thing that, in the same sort of composition. So I always knew there was almost like a dialogue between two people, two close-ups, but we have like 300 people packed in, like David Tell, we got David Tell that day, and I remember when we left, I was like, the whole thing's gonna be like on her face. And we just spent so much money filling up the cellar. But yeah, it was. I totally lost what the question was.
It was just, how tough was it when you found?
Because so much of it there is not really coverage, and they're all sort of composed oneers, sort of long takes. It wasn't about like, we got to like spend months on a scene. It was much more about just organizing the movie. So I felt very confident, and also Charlie Green, the editor, and the team, they were so incredible, and they started while we were shooting, and just, the crew's incredible, and the post-production process, all of those people, and then the sound mixers I'd worked with from, American Sniper and Joker and Stars Born and Maestro, so we all knew each other. So I was like, okay, we could do this because the team is so, capable. But it was a fun challenge because we took 3 weeks out of our post schedule. Which is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It is absolutely.
But as example, hey, hi, I'm just curious, like, when are we going to squeeze in ADR? ADR? We don't need ADR. I mean, the sound
There's no
was
ADR?
that perfect.
I don't do ADR. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't like ADR. Yeah,
And
I learned that
sound is
on American Hustle. All of Richie DeMasso's voiceover I did on my voice memo. And then that's we did all. There was no ADR on Nightmare Alley, no ADR on Stars Born, Maestro. Yeah, because that voice memo on your phone, and actors are more relaxed. So y'all just text Will like, "Hey, can you say this?" Or text Laura, "Can you say this in 73 versions?" And that's the ADR. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. I also have to ask, a film like this, especially Will's character. Will is a very funny person. Like he's hilarious. We know him. We've seen him in so many things. You can be very, very funny. But all three of you can. How hard is it to sort of structure out like this character, especially Will, cannot be funny until later on? When working on a performance like that, how cognizant you have to be? Were you having to remind Will like, okay, hey, like dial it back for
No,
lack of a
because
better
he was so Alex before we started shooting, and it was just about being relaxed and open and allowing him to be as free as possible because he had done all the work, as had Tess, Laura. So we never talked about being funny or not funny because it wasn't written that way. That was one of the changes was not making a movie about a guy who happens to have a 90-mile-an-hour fastball he didn't know. It's just about a guy who found something that he feels comfortable and inspired by, and he keeps going back. That's why, like, often you have characters telling him and the movie-going audience that he's bad. You know what I mean? And that it's even in the trailer. You're not good. You have a good heart, but you're bad. You're very bad. but that it's only about the process, and it's all about watching somebody become more comfortable. First the mic's here, and then he takes it off, and by the end he's like that, and then he feels free, so that at the end, when something happens that he feels shame about, this conversation where she's really honest about how she didn't feel comfortable sharing who she was in the marriage, and I think he probably feels guilt about not allowing that space for her. He at least has a place to go and express himself, as opposed to where we find him at the beginning of the movie, like I'm just, completely out of it at the children's assembly. He now can go on stage, and that's where the vampire set comes in, and he's talking about how relationships, like, so he gets it out of his system. That was what that was about. That's how the stand-up comedy functions in this movie. So we never really talked about it. Quite honestly, Balls, the character I play, in terms of writing levity in the movie, that is where I was conscious about sort of breaking things up and having funnier moments.
Well, we do have to ask about Balls. I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
So, obviously, he's an actor. He's very self-conscious about his career and what he's doing. Will any of your friends see this film and feel like that this is that maybe you had some inspiration from them, or is this you? Is this like you inside as an actor, sort of expressing yourself?
I think of my best moments, I'm like Balls. I mean, he has this sort of effervescent quality, and he's like so positive. The only time he's not is when he's like, but his head's on the steering wheel. But you learn it's because he's going to get a divorce or wants to, so he thinks. No, I mean, I've been an actor since I was in after grad school, or trying to be. So yeah, I mean, I could relate to all of that, and I certainly have one very dear friend who was the best guy in our school, and then and he's still, I mean, he makes a living as an actor, but he just does it for the love of the game. But it wasn't really based on anybody specifically. It was more about creating, honestly, the fun of Balls was creating like a Falstaff character, the fool. The first time you see him, he falls on his face in a pratfall. Then he's the one that gives the wisdom to Alex at the end of the movie about, what's that? It's the back of her head. Why don't you just turn it around? And it's like, oh, right. Yeah, maybe I should turn it around.
And I have to ask, because I spoke to her a couple weeks ago. Andra Day is fantastic as Ball's wife, and Tessa's a good friend. Where did the idea come for casting her? And you guys have such great chemistry. I'm curious where that all sort of came from.
Like a pipe dream. Like I saw the Billie Holiday movie, and it floored me. And then I saw the second movie she did with Lee Daniels, the horror movie, and I thought she was incredible. And she's popped into my head at one point, and I just thought, well, she'll never do it, but I have to like see this through and at least see if she'll have a conversation with me. And I think I was doing a Q&A for Lee for that movie. I think that's when I thought of it. And I was sitting there talking, and I was like, gosh, she would be great. And I was like, I wonder if I could at least talk to her. So that's how it started.
And then, Laura, I have to ask you, obviously, Tessa, sorry for the segue, but your character, she has, she goes through such a journey, just like Will's does, and I'm curious, why do you think she does decide to go back with him? What is the thing about what he's going through makes her stop and realize, I need to be part of this relationship, I need to reconsider what our relationship has been? Sorry, it's a deep one.
No, I love it. I think, when you redefine commitment, and it comes with an agreement to be vulnerable and honest with your partner, and not be afraid, forget of the other person's flaws, but of your own, to really hold that kind of humanity. And you're looking in the eyes of the person you've been in love with your whole life, and they're willing to offer you that at the same time that you're willing to attempt that kind of journey. That's hot. That's everything you dream of. That's what we're all striving toward in some way. And I don't think the movie gives answers of what it's going to be or what shape it's going to take, except they're on the train of that kind of commitment. And for us seeing Will's character admit how he didn't show up or what he wants and what he's willing to offer is one thing, but for me, to have Bradley as a writer offer me as a female actor the opportunity to say, in a film as a woman that being a mother and being a partner may not have been enough, that I still was striving for something else. There is a shame in that for women that we don't talk about enough in storytelling, and I was so moved by that opportunity to kind of get to what that was for her, that she'd had this dedication since she was 11 years old, and that is a part of who she is. And even though retirement came, there's still a drive that's never going to leave her. And so to allow herself the room for it by admitting to him her fear and vulnerability was so, amazing. And I would say all of this wasn't in my head right now. And it's not only because we finished in May. I still feel so connected to Tess because I can't decide when a character leaves me. It's the most actor line in the movie, and it's so true.
Before we end this, Bradley, I just have to ask, we are in Los Angeles, but this is such a quintessential New York film, and I'm curious, how important was that to you while you were making it and while you were sort of like structuring it and putting it all together?
Well, the truth is, I have an 8-year-old daughter, so originally when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, it has to shoot in New York because I don't want to be away from her. That's the actual truth. But then, it's funny how things happen. I have some parent friends from my daughter's school who left New York and moved, took the train. That's where all that came from. So just observing how parents have tried to survive in the city, and then if they go out. And then it was just about really being in grad school and New York and McDougal Street. And it was the cinema of it, and just how I experienced New York walking around. That's where the 40 came in and the aspect ratio. And then the sort of New York downtown, that street always reminds me of like Christmas lights on a Christmas tree. And coming from Philadelphia and then moving there for grad school, like New York was like utopia. So that was really important. And that's what it is for him. He goes to this place and he's walking down in the cellar and there's this whole world that he doesn't know about, and all these people and this culture. So it was essential. That's what it had to be.
Well, please thank Mr. Bradley Cooper.
Thank you.